You know, there's a reason for cautionary tales.
Then why don't more people heed their warnings?
I don't know, but after they hear my new show, they will think twice.
Oh yeah? About what?
Eating Tide Pod, playing with Ouija boards, tucking the Karens, you name it. If you should heed caution, we're talking about it.
Check out Harper's brand new podcast, Cautionary Tales with Harper. Available on Apple Podcasts and wherever you download podcasts.
And be sure to press subscribe and give us a review.
Cautionary Tales with Harper.
Subscribe wherever you download podcasts today.
Today on The Grave Talks, Demonic Culture, a conversation with Peter James Dowling. Is demonic activity on the rise? Is there something in our culture that has turned a switch onto high when it comes to the world of dark energies infesting our environment? There is a hierarchical system of demons who want to maintain control of the living and seem to stop at nothing to do so. How does the living protect themselves from such forces? Today, we discuss demonic culture with Peter James Dowling on The Grave Talks.
Well, there's many ways you can be a demonologist. Unfortunately, like the last interview, I didn't want to become a demonologist. I wound up crossing that line to a certain point, and I've heard other people telling me that I'm needed by God to cast these things out, to cleanse, to get into the metaphysical side of the paranormal. My way was through my confirmation through a Catholic priest, and I'm not even Catholic. Mm-hmm. And this Catholic priest was an exorcist because this Pope has recommended that every diocese in the United States has at least one exorcist because things are getting worse. Others, what they do is a lot of them are clergy and part of the cloth, and they get their training from Rome or a Bible college. To be certified to be reverend or a priest. The misconception of it all is a lot of people think that they can go online and get certified as a demonologist, and they're asking for trouble. They're going to make things a lot worse. I've seen people do investigations or awaken a entity that was in a home that was very negative and made things worse for the clients. It lay dormant when they came in to do a cleansing or they came in to do an investigation. A lot of the clients have complained in the past that things have worsened, and many times they would flee from the residence, and many times these entities would follow them no matter where they went. So whenever I have a client, I tell them you can't run from this thing, but the only way to deal with it is to fight it. The thing is, I also notice, I've had people come to me and said they want to be a demonologist, and many times the red flags would go up because it's not something that we want to do. I've talked to priests and exorcists that it was a field that they didn't want to get into it because it's very dark. Once you cross that line, bad things do happen. I'm constantly attacked metaphysically, spiritually, and sometimes physically. And it's constant. You declared war on these entities. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, and you answered the question, certainly, and then you gave me more questions to ask because that's just the nature of how all of this works.
Yes, unfortunately.
So let's talk about this. Let's unpack that a little bit. Someone who goes online, and I believe a lot of people, probably a majority of them, who actively want to be a demonologist. And I know I totally understand what you're saying. It's not something you really want to do. If you fully understand what it is you're saying you're wanting to do, you wouldn't be raising your hand, pick me. But someone who does go online, someone who's excited about this idea, someone who's watched Ghost Adventures one too many times and owns one too many black shirts, that says, I think I'm going to go try and do this and be a demonologist. What is the difference in terms of knowledge and preparedness that one would have from simply studying online and being certified by, who Bill Joe's demonology school, versus being, someone who's been brought into this, certified by the church and really almost reluctantly, like yourself, having gotten into that area of it, in terms of how the tools that they're bringing in mentally to a case, someone who's been certified, who's gone down that track, such as you, versus someone who is, almost, too giddy about the idea. What is the difference here in terms of knowledge that each individual would have?
Well, it seems to be a lot of naiveness on a lot of people. They don't know what they're doing. John Zaffis has warned people many, many times that it's a very dangerous field. He explains it perfectly and how it is. And, there's people who think it's really cool. They watched a lot of TV. There's a lot of things out there that kind of glorify the demonic, subliminally sometimes, through games, through different movies. I mean, it even goes down to a children's program of subliminal messages. And, it seems like society fantasize about these things. Mostly it's false truths, and people, they don't have a clue of what it's like to deal with these entities. And the thing is I believe that they're naive. I'm not saying that as a negative, I'm coming from a negative platform. For me, I did not want to cross that line, as I said before. And I was running into demonic cases, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And every fiber of my being, I didn't want to deal with it at all. And but something takes over me when I do this thing, and I do pray and I do protect myself. It is very, very, very dangerous. And once you cross that line, you've actually declared war on these entities. They know when you cross that line, and there's no turning back. Your life changes forever. It's never the same. And it's a constant battle with dark forces and these entities. Even the church and other religions, they'll educate you but they don't. It's so dangerous that a layman, in layman's terms, it's not good unless you become educated in the field. You might think that you're called to do something like this and you have the heart to help people, but then necessarily it doesn't mean that this is God's plan for you. And if you're not careful, you can get in serious trouble, because it seems like, and we have so many fields in the paranormal other than demonology, but I think there's an attraction to it. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of people ask me questions about it because they're fascinated by it. But I like to warn people, just so it's a seed planted in their head to know, the dangers, the hidden dangers, because we talked about the dangers just paranormal last time. But when it comes to demonology, it's very, very dark. And I have seen people who weren't called to do this and went into it for the wrong reasons, winding up being dark themselves and falling into a trap, and they're starting to do spells, and they're starting to work with these dark entities. And I've had people from satanic churches and a lot of other cults ask me, what's it take to be a demonologist? And I knew that they were going to use it for bad things and not for the good. And, I do it only to serve God, only to help people understand what's out there from my experience.
Let's talk about some of the points that you made in all of that. You had mentioned something that I find interesting to talk about: subliminal messages. And you had mentioned sometimes they're even into children's programming, and they're in all different places. When it comes to subliminal messaging, I think quite often a lot of us get this idea that there's some bad person back behind the scenes that's going, I'm going to stick this into this movie and no one's going to catch it, but they're going to somehow get this message or knowledge out of it. Is that always the case, where there really truly is some bad person back there that's trying to purposely create a subliminal message into whether it be a piece of advertising or entertainment? Or are subliminal messages sometimes created inadvertently, where the creator of said piece of entertainment is almost used as a vessel without even their knowledge? An example would be, I'm not a good painter by any means in terms of art, but if I were to go paint, said, go make a picture of that airplane over there and paint it. Here's a paint and here's a canvas. We would come back and take a look at that painting, and I can guarantee it would not look very much like an airplane. May kind of look like it, but somebody's going to go, it looks like this or it looks like that.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I really didn't intend for it to be like that, but it kind of came out that way. Is that how sometimes subliminal messaging is basically encoded into things, or are there more things that we are unaware of people intentionally trying to put things into media? Because that would certainly require human intervention to do so, to embed things into popular culture pieces of entertainment or advertisements.
Well, a lot of people would label that abstract art, and I probably look at it and say, what the heck is that, from a 5-year-old?
Well, yes, of course, that would be the first thing. But you could also then make the argument of, is there a subliminal message in there? And
maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, and
maybe a little bit of both.
That's what I wonder about when it comes to, take my example aside, but more so when we are talking about real things that are out there. Can you give some examples of where subliminal messaging has been found in popular culture?
Well, we have, for instance, I know of one case of a child watching some programs, and I'm not sure what the programs were, but one woman I was speaking to that had a cousin or a daughter. She was about 8 years old, and she went online, and she wanted to look up something online, and it threw her to a site where it was talking about demons, and she became knowledgeable of what 666 was and everything else. And her mother said, how did you learn all this? She says, well, I wanted to learn how to tell time, and it put me up on this site with an upside down pentagram, and I've learned 666, the number of the beast, and everything else. And she just, she didn't have parental controls on her computer. It can be, we don't know. I mean, we don't know if it's, I'd like to say in my heart that people don't know, or they don't believe in demonic forces. They don't believe that there are angels. So they think it's cool, it's fun. I mean, the Game of Thrones, they use specific names of actual names of demons. You have card games and what have you that I can't think of the name right off the bat. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not used to, I've been on radio before and everything, but I always get a little nervous.
Sure.
But there's games out there that use demon names. There is movies, there's films.
there's science fiction or basically sci-fi movies and things like that use demonic names. Matter of fact, Conjuring 2 keeps talking about a specific demon. And, you know, it's sometimes Hollywood glorifies these things. I can't say that I think it's for entertainment purposes. People say, hey, let's use these things because everybody likes to be scared. You have people that ghost hunt just for the thrill of it.
Yeah.
But they don't realize the dangers that are involved in it. And I just want you to know, because it's in my field, there are angels from heaven, from God. Now, remember, the demonic forces, they are one time created by God. They're fallen angels. They have names similar to some of them, not all of them, but there are some names that are similar to God's angels. That's why it says in religious texts, do not pray to an angel, because there is also the same name that angel in heaven is also on the other side. And they fall into this earth, and they've declared war on man ever since. And they're just here to destroy people in any way, shape, or possible. And they are so slick. They will get out there, and through the media, through social media, through movies, through films, through music, and it affects people's lives. Now, I'm not talking. I'm you know, when I excuse me for a moment. When I, you know, like Dante's Inferno, it's a video, it's a popular game, you know, Sony PlayStation and what have you. There's a lot where they're using the actual demon names, and and people get wrapped up into that, and you know that can lead to infestations, that can lead to attachments over time. And you know, it doesn't happen to everybody, but it does, you know. And I have run into cases, very few, like I said, not every cemetery is haunted, and not every house is haunted. And I think I ran across 3 demonic cases in my 34 years.
What is, you know, and you kind of answered the question, but I'd like to expound upon it a little bit. What is the risk when a specific demon name is used in a movie or in popular culture or a video game, and someone's sitting down in their living room, they turn on that DVD or press the on-demand play button, and they're having their popcorn, and, you know, out of the movie pops, you know, all these demonic names. And, you know, it's said out loud. Is there a risk for that family who watches that movie one time that of something happening, or does more have to go on for just that the exercise of those names being said aloud in a setting for it to really attach its claws in and start to take some more action than just something that comes out of the speakers?
It can definitely. I never heard of it happening just one time. It's over a period of time of keep playing it. However, I do know that when a name is mentioned, it knows. And people who have a higher power, they know that, you know, as a Christian, I know when I pray, he hears me. It's the same thing when it comes to these entities, especially the dark ones. It seems that they are aware when their name is. It can be people. To me, it seems like a glorification of that demon's name. Some of them, it kind of. Last time we had this conversation, I noticed that a lot of these entities don't want to be known. They like to hide in the shadows. They don't. They want you to believe that everything that you do is, you know, from you. Not that they had played no part of it. But then there's also a side of glorification, and some do like that. So it's a fine line between the two. But I would tell people that it's not wise to keep saying the name over and over, constantly be doing that, because there are people who've had problems from playing constant horror movies, especially when the name is spoken. Now, the funniest thing is they know everything about us. There's no secrets. When you go into an exorcism, they will tell you your darkest secret right out there to try to persuade you away from the deliverance, from the prayers, the rite of exorcism. They try to make you stutter and follow up to make you feel that you're not going to be able to do it and that you're defeated and walk away. So, yeah, they know everything. That's why you had Houdini, the great musician back in the 20s and the 30s. He was into spiritualism and mediumship, and his wife, he made a deal with his wife that if any of them passed away, they would come back and they would give a code so they would know that that person is them. Unfortunately, from what I've read and from what I know, that never happened, and he kept running into fake mediums, fake psychics, and what have you. So it never, or she did, Mrs. Houdini didn't find the answer that she was looking for. That code never came back. Houdini never came back. So I thought, when I was telling my girlfriend that I was going to, somehow if we could send a code or a message if one of us passed. And she looked at me and she says, but yeah, that these demonic forces know that and can come back and will tell the code, and everyone's going to think it's you, but it's not you.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and that's the confusing part of a lot of this, where you can plot this out, this whole plan of, okay, code, so we know it's you. But it could legitimately be you too. I mean, we hear plenty of cases where it's not demonic. It literally is someone's grandmother or father that has returned simply to watch and stay guard for a short period of time, or just to see their grandchildren, or provide comfort in a time of need. And it's not demonic at all, but one still sits there and they want to feel 100% that this is that person. But anyone with knowledge of this, including myself, you're going to have that little bit of you that's still going to be saying, I'm not 100% sure that this is who I think it is. And sometimes only time can tell you and maybe solidify that a little bit better if nothing else happens. Maybe 30 years from now, you look back and go, clearly nothing else happened. There was comfort that was brought at that moment, and I think it was my grandfather or something. Then you kind of have that more of a solid answer. But in the moment of the comfort or the visit, you don't know, because it could easily be one way or the other. And is there ever a way of knowing that in the moment where it matters most?
Well, I don't know, and that's the whole thing. I believe I sent you a video of Melody. She is my partner, and she recorded her grandfather and her grandmother that died years ago. And she recognized the voice, and she broke out in tears. My ex-wife, grandmother, passed away many years before I met her, and I played it back, and my ex-wife and my ex-mother-in-law broke out in tears and didn't want to tell the grandfather that I made contact through a spirit box, or actually the EVP was the first time, spirit box for the second, that I caught their voices, and they were saying, hello, Melody. Well, like for Melody, it was, hi, Mel, it's me, Pops. And, and then the grandmother said, hi. And we were over their grave when we did this. And so I would love to believe in my heart that it was them. And I really would. But then I looked at Melody, and I told my ex-wife, even at the time, long time ago, it might not be them. And
Sure.
It's sad. But sometimes we don't want to hear the truth that it's possibly not Now, there are people out there that think the littlest thing, it's got to be demonic. I first go in there for one thing. When I go and do investigations, I go there to find reasonable explanations to everything. For whatever reasons, and I look for that first. It's when I cannot explain in detail of this is the reason why your door opens up. You step on a certain board, it opens up. You're living in an old house and you have rodents scratching. I found traces through my full spectrum light that my black light would show the entrails of the animal's UV light, and I always find reasonable explanations. Like the EMF is too high, so you have allergic reaction to it. You have faulty wiring, that's why your light flickers, or you've got a bad lamp. So I always look for reasonable explanations to everything first. I go in as a non-believer of the paranormal, even though in my heart, from my experiences, there are ghosts, there are demonic forces, there are things that we cannot explain. I can tell you a lot about the demonology side, and I can tell you of just regular paranormal investigations on that side. We have intelligent haunts, we have residual haunts, and we have earthbound and non-earthbound entities. And, we have to put all that in the equation whenever we do an investigation to find out what's actually in there. But I have gone into haunted locations, including cemeteries, where we come straight out and talk about Christ and him dying on the cross for our sins, and have the whole place quiet. Where before the ghost box, the SB11 was going off like crazy. We were getting EVPs. We were having paranormal experiences. And then once we talk about that, it would go hush, hush. So I have to put all that together. And to me personally, because I'm in the field of demonology, I heard in a program, and I believe it was yours, you had a guest that was talking about how our own thoughts and people that are alive can come through a ghost box.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, and I listen to it, and I'm very open-minded to people's different definition of things and theories. The thing is also on my side of demonology, I also know that these entities purposely mimic the living, mimic the dead, to get close to you, to have you, like they'll come to you as a child. That they're definitely good at that, coming to you as a child. That way you're thinking, oh my goodness, there's a child ghost. How sad. Could God do this to a child who's so innocent that passed on? And you get attached to that child, to that ghost entity. And you want to communicate with it, and you want to help it. And that's how it gets the attachment. First thing you know, you have the infestation. Then you have the attachment. And first thing you know, you're not dealing with a child ghost anymore. You're dealing with something evil and horrible, and you start blacking out, and first thing you know, you're doing things that you normally wouldn't do, and you wake up and you're saying, oh my goodness, why am I in a mental institution? Why am I in jail? Why did I do certain things? So yeah, this is from the demonology side, from what I've studied and experienced.
Sure. Just when I thought I had figured something out, you go in and just say,
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Here's another 40 possibilities for that one. Now, but you're exactly right. I mean, and that's what this is all about. It's, we all have to talk about these things and be open to others' ideas and opinions, because that's what a lot of this is. And I've just found that so fascinating, where it honestly seems that as of late, I mean, I've been doing the show and talking ghosts now for if I'm going to round it out, we're near 10 years. That we're about 8 realistically, but on the podcast. But I've been on the air for 20 some years prior, still doing ghost stuff on terrestrial radio, and I hadn't heard this idea until as of late of the living projecting themselves as ghosts, other than like astral projections and things of that nature. But even then, it wasn't that others were seeing them or feeling them as spirits or ghosts. But that adds another question to that whole equation of, well, in fact, was it them or was it something mimicking them, at the same time? Doppelgangers are an interesting thing when it comes to that, because there's this area where I've had stories of people who in their dream went from point A to point B, and they remember it in their dream, and then they actually can get confirmation from those at point B that they saw them there. And there is a conscious memory on both parts of that person being there, yet they were never physically there. And that to me seems like that was probably likely that person. It wasn't something imitating it, because they have knowledge, they remember it. But when you get to that doppelganger world, that's where that individual doesn't have any knowledge of being, at the mall the other day, or whatever it was, and they weren't there, but yet someone said they had a full conversation with them that was kind of off. Are doppelgangers, when we talk about that, is that something that you believe falls more into the ghostly realm of things, or more into the demonic realm of things?
That's a very good question, Tony. Very good question. I believe that it's more to the demonic side, because again, you said that, and I've read, and I've also heard it from other people, that something isn't right. And that's usually the case of people where they've seen entities of their loved ones. Oftentimes I've heard that something wasn't exactly right, or something was amiss. So yes, because they take on the form, because these entities are shapeshifters.
Yes.
And they will take any form, sometimes solid. Again, we're going to go back to these angels from heaven. They can come to as a solid form, and you wouldn't even know it. I've seen entities, ghosts, in cemeteries that were solid. They were peeking around a corner somewhere, or in a house. I've seen them solid form. I've seen shadow people. I've seen dark form. That one shadow, demonic, when I was playing with the Ouija board for the first time, that was a shadow, but it was perfect form. And I've seen them where they come as a beautiful person, and they'll come to you real close, like on Route 20. When I was walking down Route 20, it was in the middle of the night, approximately around 2-3 o'clock. And I remember that this woman was very beautiful on my side of the street. And I was walking, and I'm thinking to myself, why is a beautiful woman walking at 2 o'clock in the morning out in the street, It didn't make sense, but I just noticed that she was very beautiful, and I walked under a street lamp, and I could see her, and all of a sudden I noticed right off the bat something wasn't right. And she was she was like levitating. She was walking, but she became levitating, and when she came close, she had hideous teeth, and she turned into a hag, and she went through me. And when she went through me, it stunned me. It didn't paralyze me, but I felt it go through like a shock. And I remember yelling. So they can come as a cat, they can come as a dog, they can come as a material object. They will manipulate material objects. So, and usually, like, again, when I've gone to cases, it's not like a piece of paper or book that they throw on the floor, or like, it's usually a pyramid of chairs on a dining room table, and a pyramid, or heavy objects being thrown, refrigerators being knocked over, things smashing hard against the wall. And there's times where I've heard things smash against the wall, and I swore that it broke, and there was not a mark on it laying on the floor. But it sounded like it was thrown in full force.
Sure.
So
that wraps up the first part of our conversation with Peter James Dowling on demonic culture. In part 2, what were some of Peter's fears when he began investigating demons and trying to help those who were suffering? What does Peter fear today, now that this is part of his world? And is he a target for dark entities, even after a case is closed, just because they seem to know who he is, with a target on his back? And people who fall into the trap of demonology with good intentions, but still it ends up turning dark very quickly. What are some of those traps, and what has happened to some who have gone down that road? All of that and more in part 2 of our conversation. To hear it, become a Gravekeeper. If that's a supporter of our program, sign up at patreon.com/thegravetalks, or go to thegravetalks.com and press Become a Gravekeeper. It's only $5 a month, and you'll have access to all of our interviews, parts 1 and part 2, hundreds to binge away on, as well as advanced episodes of the program available to you weeks before they're released to the public. Check it out, patreon.com/thegravetalks, to support our program and keep us on the air. Welcome to part 2 of our conversation with Peter James Dowling on demonic culture. Let me take a step back. This is a question I wanted to ask earlier, but we kind of kept going down some other roads, and that's fine. And when you first started getting into the world, and hesitantly so, of demonology, what initially in you were some of your fears? I'm going to ask that question in another way down the road about what they are now, but I want you to go back in your mind to at the beginning, when you hesitantly got into that area to help people. What in your conscious, what was it saying to you? What was some of your fears of entering that world? Not having been extremely involved in it yet, but just with the knowledge that you had of it at that time. What was going through your mind?
What was going through my mind is I was one of the investigations. I've been doing this for like 20 some odd years, 28 years, I think I was at that point. And I wanted to keep the metaphysical side out of my investigations. I wanted to find out what was out there without any religion or any metaphysical brainwashing or anything else. I wanted to document, film, and record what was out there and let people decide. I came from an environment where people didn't believe in such things, that they were all demons. And I was like, hey, you tell me to go right, I'm going to go left. That's how I am. Mm-hmm. And I went on an investigation, and I knew it was haunted. And when Eastern Shore started in 2001, 2002, and I was just the lowest guy in the totem pole, just carrying wires, we used to go to one particular cemetery, and it was known to have a demonic entity in there, but I didn't think of anything, demonic, whatever. So I went there, and we caught orbs, and we did our training in that one particular cemetery. Came to a point when we disbanded. I was continuously doing investigations, but a lot of times I would have to do it alone because I couldn't get people to come with me. And I was doing the investigations alone, and one time I was driving up there, it wasn't too long ago, I knew of the demonic entity that was there, and telepathy, as I was driving, something was telling me, don't go, don't go, don't go. Now, I don't know if it was just because of the fear and anxiety of going to a haunted location alone and dealing with this. My natural fears were telling me this. I don't know, but I feel I can't prove it. I really can't prove it, Tony, but I heard a telepathic voice in my head do not go. And I said, no, I'm going to go. And then he says, I know that you're coming. And I said, thought back, I know that you know that I'm coming. And I knew right off the bat that it was a different feeling, everything was different from what I ever experienced in my life. That I was going in there and I was going to deal with this demonic entity. And I went in there, the cemetery at night, and sure and behold, I confronted this entity, and I even captured it on film or on my digital camera. I don't plaster it all over the internet or anything. I keep that hidden, but I do have it. And then as time progressed and through the years, I've run into these cases, and all of a sudden I started getting close to God. I felt that my life was in danger. I felt that I was vulnerable. I felt that if I didn't do something quickly, I could die.
Uh-huh.
This thing could kill me, or something. It's just so horrible. You walk in. I don't want people to go into a place that is known to be demonic. It's like I said, these entities are everywhere. When you kick out one, they just keep moving. And they keep going. You can't cast them out away from the earth forever into a pit of hell. You can't do that. It goes to one person, to another person, or a different location to a different location when you cast them out. When you go to these locations, it's a feeling of dread, a feeling of heaviness, a feeling of every fiber in your being does not want to be there. You will feel threatened. You will feel that your life is on the line. So that's when I knew John Zappis, and I mean, I didn't know him personally, but I read all his books and everything, and I know Lorraine Warren through the years, and Ed Warren, and I put all the pieces together, and I was like, oh no, I'm finding myself crossing the line because I'm running into these things, and they're very hostile. Mm-hmm. What do? I do not want, please, I'm telling people and other people in the paranormal community, I do not want to cross this line. It's dangerous. John has warned about it over and over, and so has Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren and the rest of them said, don't cross that line. You don't know what you're getting into. And I knew what I was getting into, and I didn't want to do it. And I knew how dangerous it was, and I knew it just, if I had to do this, that my life would be in jeopardy every single day. If they can't get at me, they'll get at my loved ones and affect them in many ways. And even, people that have relationships with demonologists or people in this field is very, very difficult. And it affects them, and you can see that in the family cell. It's a constant attack. It's very hard to have relationships with people that are demonologists. And finally, as I went along, I started going to church to build up my spirituality, to build up my strength and the positive. I was looking for something positive to grasp. And I knew that there was a God because I've seen the demonic. There's got to be the opposite, And whenever you have a car battery, and you have the negative lead and you have the positive lead and you have the jumper cables, and when you hit the two together, you have a spark and a bang, and that's the kind of reaction that you get when it comes to the paranormal. Yeah, the negative and the positive, and it's a warfare going on. And when I went into that church, after church, I went up to the priest of the mass and I started talking to the priest, and he after our conversation, he introduced himself. Of course, he had PhDs up the yin-yang, and when it comes to metaphysics, and he told me that he went to Rome and became an exorcist. So he works through the Diocese of Syracuse, New York, as the exorcist. And by the time we were done with the conversation, he told me that I was in the fight, the good fight, and to continue on. And he told me you better get some business cards out there so you can help people. That was confirmation that it's too late. I crossed the line. This is what God wants me to do. I had to have other people tell me that before. It's not a certificate that you go online and get.
Sure.
Because you're definitely going to get yourself hurt. You need to be confirmed and go to an established college that teaches that, on top of being confirmed by other people. And if you get confirmed by clergy, to me, that is even better. And I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my being that I've been called to do this. Because, again, anyone in their right mind does not want to be a demonologist. Once they become educated in the field, or an exorcist. Because once you get into that field, your life is in danger.
Are you now essentially a target for dark entities, even after you leave a case, even after that is seemingly said and done and things have calmed down? Just day-to-day actions, almost like a target on your back, for lack of a better term, for these things, because of the work that you've done? And if so, what sort of things have you come across that you can clearly say, there's something that is targeting me now today because I'm part of that world?
Right off the bat. You're a constant target afterwards. And I'm sure, Tony, you've heard that from other demonologists. You're constantly under attack once you're crossed that line. When I go to a case, once it's done, I don't go home and bring out the popcorn or the bonbons and say, hey, there's another person helped, it's over with. No, they know you, and they all work in unison, and it's like a military. You have different ranks, and they have specific jobs, and so a lot of them have specific jobs that are the same, but they're higher ranks. You have their generals, and they work all the way down to imps. So the thing is one of the things that they like doing is they affect your dreams at night. When you sleep, you have night terrors, where before I never had night terrors. I see a lot of times with relationships with family and what have you, I've had people become very negative. You're constantly, you start focusing on negative things in your life. It can pretty much affect relationships, divorce, fights. It thrives on the negative, and it constantly gives you thoughts that you don't normally have, bad thoughts of things that you would normally think about. And my partner, who studies the realm of angels and orbs, and she goes on another study, she's been affected by the whole thing as well. And everyone that I'm in contact with, that I care about and love, gets affected in some certain way when I talk to them, once they know that I'm in this field. I have 2 other jobs, and they all know that I'm a demonologist, paranormal investigator, and I'm very bold about it. I don't care what other people think, because there is always that one person that is frightened by what's going on, that once didn't believe, now believes, and they're asking for my help. Mm-hmm. So the case, right now I'm working on a case, and I'm working with an individual up north in upstate New York. I would love to give it to Plato to take care of, because it's near the Canadian border. Mm-hmm. But she was a Wiccan, and she was playing with occult tools, and it's backfired on her. And she believes that there's demonic forces that are at play, and she's thinking about suicide and cutting herself up. And she was also a nurse for the state of New York, a psychiatric center. So I'm sure that was a beautiful recipe for infestation. Now it's trying to possess her. So I'm working with her. Me and my partner are working with her right now. And that came out of the woodwork. And she went to a social media site to ask for help, and no one was helping her. They were saying, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's your medication, maybe it's this. And she reached out to me, and so that's the case I'm working on right now.
And we don't have to obviously go into very specific details about that, but if you can, in some general sense, how do you help someone like that comes to you with those sort of problems that needs help? How do you help work them or help them work through this so they can get back to a more balanced and happy life without these sort of things interfering with their just day-to-day existence?
Well, number one is you allow them to contact you. You allow you to be pleasant. You know, the people are hurting, and we all know what it's like to hurt. And you're partly a psychiatrist as well, or a counselor. But at the same time, you know that they're a human being, and you want them to feel that they're a human being. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of problems with trust. I mean, I've had police come to me and tell me things, you know, and it's like they're very cautious of who they tell of what they're experiencing. They're afraid of being ridiculed or losing their job, or you know, they're just afraid of that. So you become like a counselor, and you talk to them. First, it was just through messaging, and then it was, can I call you? And I'm like, certainly, you can call me. So I give that person my number, and I would, of course, bring my partner in, and we listen, and we ask questions, and we listen to their story of what's going on with them, what they are experiencing, and we piece it together. We have to also decide, okay, is this psychological? Are these people just looking for attention? You know, what is it? We have to look for reasonable explanations first.
Sure.
So if it makes sense and it sounds credible compared to other cases that I've had in the past, and I put the piece, and also my experiences, then I know if the case it's plausible. Once it becomes plausible, we stay in contact. I don't like, many times I've run across paranormal investigators, and I said that the last time I was interviewed, they say, oh, great, we caught evidence. Oh, this is awesome. They get it on film. They get it on digital camera. They get it on video. They got the recordings, the electronics, and they put it up on social media. They put it on TV, you know, and they become stars overnight. But the question is what have you done for that person? Have you solved that problem? Because there are so many people out there that ask for paranormal investigators or demonologists to come in, and they leave them hanging once they get the evidence. They don't come back, and things get worse for them, and they flee. Mm-hmm. You have to stick with the person right to the very end until they can get a normal life together. So it is in our schedule that we will be going up there eventually. Right now, we're in just communication. And I said, when we were having this conversation, it automatically gets bad for them once they start talking to me. Automatically. And I warn them because they know that you're having this conversation with me. And the person I says was talking to me was just the other night. She says, I know it's listening. I know I'm in the garage right now, but no matter where I go, it follows. I know. And when she's told me that the entity has her trapped in the house, doesn't want her to leave anywhere, and that's usually the case in demonic activity, that it was very controlling. So our plans are to go up there, do an investigation, gather the evidence, and then I'm going to pray and become a vessel for the Lord to kick this thing out of the house. There's decent people, police officers, people in the medical field have experienced things like that. Decent people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, with good reputations, and that ask for help. And this is how we deal with it. And we keep doing it until we have signs that that entity is gone. And usually we know by the activity disappearing. Now, there's times where the entity will play a game that they left, and they didn't. They'll just pretend that they left. And many times after we do a cleansing and cast the entity out, you'll smell flowers. You'll see other signs like that. One time I did a cleansing, there was a cross on the floor that was lit, and I have my partner that witnessed it. And the atmosphere lightens up where a place was always dark. The corners at night you wouldn't be able to see because it's so dark in the house. Then all of a sudden you can see the corners of the house. It lightens up. I cannot scientifically explain what is at work here. So I can only go to the metaphysical side and say this works. Yeah. So we have to concentrate in the paranormal field of knowing what works and what doesn't, and work with that.
That wraps up the second half of our conversation with Peter James Dowling on demonic culture. A big thank you to him for joining us once again to discuss his views and experiences on the program. And thank you for supporting the show and keeping us on the air. Until next time for the Grave Talks, I'm Tony Bruski. Thanks for listening.